All right, so this one is going to essentially be about how to hack the flow of life, how to harness the power of synchronicity to propel you forward in life. Synchronicity is this cliche term in the spiritual world. Everyone wants to try to get synchronicities, but in this one, we're going to talk about why they happen. We're going to, as a byproduct, get into dimensions and consciousness. We're going to talk about angel numbers, what I believe they are, why they happen, who's trying to communicate with us. And then we're going to tie it all together and at the end get into how to use that power to propel you forward and how to live a synchronous, I think that's a word, synchronous life. So, what is a synchronicity? The experience of two or more events that are apparently causally unrelated or unlikely to occur together by chance, yet are experienced as occurring together in a meaningful manner. So basically, something that seems like a coincidence, but in the way that it happens, maybe in the speed that it happens, just the weirdness of what it feels like, you feel like there's a higher meaning. It's more than just something that happens by chance. And really, what drove me to dive into this topic is why the heck do I have a thought and then it instantly shows up somewhere in my reality? Maybe the exact words I'm thinking show up in the lyrics in the music that I'm listening to like right away. Maybe I'll read what I'm thinking in books or hear it in a conversation. And why do things just seem to happen at the right time? Why does perfect timing happen and how can I have more of it? After getting into it, I think this is something we can hack because synchronicity, I believe, is our true way of living. It's like our baseline way of living. Synchronicity is an ever present reality for those who have eyes to see. It is always happening. And really, what it is it's pure alignment. They really are feedback signals, and they indicate that our inner state is coherent and our internal world is aligned with the external world. And reality is responding really smoothly, really effortlessly, naturally. It's flowing. When we are aligned, timing improves, resistance drops, things just feel effortless, and the underlying patterns of life show up to us more clearly. And so it's aligning with the universe instead of trying to force our will onto it. That's why it becomes distorted. That's why we struggle. That's why we keep feeling like we're fighting uphill battles. And the key is to not go out and start trying to chase synchronicities or start over interpreting everything because it can easily become that. When you start needing to see signs that you are going in the right direction, you are no longer aligned, you are back into seeking mode, into forcing mode. We got to notice them, appreciate them, and just keep on moving, keep on doing what we're doing. Now, that's just the base, right? So we know we're aligning with, we could say, the universe, but what is actually going on? For a while there, I thought that maybe some kind of higher intelligence was trying to communicate with me. What are we aligning with? This is important to know so that we can align with it more. And you could call it many different things. You could call it higher dimensions, God, source, the universe, whatever. But for this presentation, we're going to call it the field. You can also call the field consciousness, pure consciousness. There are layers to this reality. On the surface, we're seeing things in the physical. We're seeing our thoughts. We're seeing different events play out. We're seeing the results. But beneath all of that, at the root of reality, is what you could call an organizing field. And the reason you could call this God is because it's the same intelligence that governs nature, that underlies patterns in physics. Like it underlies literally everything. It's the field of creation. It's where things are created. And we're going to get more into this as we go. Here's just an example of how that looks. So you have everything showing up in our life, and behind that, you have pure awareness. This essentially is just nothingness, but it's where everything happens. That's why we say in meditation, we try to quiet our mind, we become fully present, and that's when we tap into this field of consciousness. It feels like nothingness, but really it's everything. We have the illusion of multiple realities, right? Everyone is living out their own individual life. There's tons of different variations, but at the top of it is one absolute unchanging thing. And this is what we are aligning with when we have synchronicities. Another way that this can be explained, or a way that it has been explained by different philosophers, is the law of pure potentiality in the seven spiritual laws of success. This was Deepak's first thing, it was his first chapter because it underlies everything else. The source of all creation is pure consciousness, pure potentiality seeking expression from the unmanifest to the manifest. And when we realize that our true self is one of pure potentiality, not our mind, not our body, but pure consciousness, that is our true self, pure just awareness, we align with the power that manifests everything in the universe. The field is where infinite potentials exist. So, in this physical world, what do we live in? We live in duality. And we can choose to play out any one of these potentials, any one of these trajectories. But in the field, they don't exist as good or bad. They are not labeled, they are neutral. Those good and bad labels only appear once that possibility is expressed through a limited perspective, right? Our brain limits our perception of reality. We are limited by our thoughts when we try to explain everything and make sense of everything. These pure potentials also become limited when they interact with desire or fear or survival thinking, which is what this is going to show here. This one's a little complicated, but it's going to show how the dimensions align with our state of consciousness. I was going to say our state of mind, but like our state of consciousness, you could say. We are living in very restricted dimensions when we have those lower emotions. And we move up to living in higher dimensions when we first get to neutrality. And you got the colors there as well, which, what do you know, align with the chakras. So you got the green one starting to tap into our heart. And we practice living in these higher emotions. We get to acceptance, radical acceptance, and then we start surrendering more. We experience oneness, full presence, non duality. We get to a state of unity. And these higher dimensions, whatever number dimension you want to call it, this is what the field would be. The field where infinite paths exist. And then this graphic is showing how there is one field that underlies basically everything. And in physics, we know that you have two sides. You have Einstein's unified field theory, and then you have quantum mechanics. These two are trying to unite, but the equations don't really line up. I think that science will change once we become aware of, or once we realize what consciousness actually is. And we incorporate consciousness into science. This one, again, you could also call the field the source, right? God, source. Up here in higher dimensions is more limitlessness. Down here, you get to more restraint. So the higher dimensions are getting filtered down into the lower ones. One thing that we have full control over is our attention. And so with our attention, we can choose which one of the endless, infinite potentials that exist up here, if we think it, if we visualize it, it does already exist and it exists up here. With our attention, we can essentially choose what potentials collapse into our physical experience. And another thing I want to mention too is that we're not pulling a possibility from this field down. We're not grasping for it. We're not grinding to it. We are becoming compatible with it. Again, we are aligning with it. This is the source of limitless energy, is alignment. But one more distinction I want to make too, and this is probably the most important thing in this whole entire video, is that we are not separate. Us down here, we are not separate from this. We live, parts of us, in all of these dimensions at once. So I used to think, oh, maybe it's higher dimensional beings giving me these signs, showing me these angel numbers. Maybe I'm communicating with even, my higher self or whatever. Or some people may think God is telling me what to do. Really, what it is it's just us communicating with us. At the root, everything is one. And when you feel synchronicity, when you feel alignment, you truly start to understand what it feels like to be one with everything and move in sync with everything, the entirety of creation. What you're really doing is you're accessing higher intelligence from a less fragmented version of yourself, a more unified version of yourself. But me as a third dimensional, bound by time, bound by space being, It's hard to really wrap my head around the version of me that is non-local, that can exist everywhere at once. And that's what we kind of start to glimpse when we become aware in our dreams. But anyway, that was way too much rambling on about that. This is why we become what we focus on, because we can control energy with consciousness, with controlling where our attention goes. But to be able to tap into that higher version of ourselves more and more, but it's going to be hard to tap into that higher version of ourselves more and more if our inner state is very noisy and chaotic. If we have all this fear, if we have all this tension, if we're very rigid. But when we're calm, we're present, and we're open, our awareness expands and we can more easily synchronize with reality. And that is where coherence becomes into play. If you've ever read any of Joe Dispenza's stuff, he talks a lot about coherence. And it is when our brain and our body and our environment, so you could say, all things are clicking on all cylinders. All things are working in tandem. You can look at our brain and our body and our thinking as a machine. When everything is working properly, things are going to flow smoothly. But if we have things within us that are going the opposite way, if we have thoughts that we're giving power to that are holding us back, if we have a war going on within us, we know where we want to go, what we could do, but something is holding us back there. That is incoherence. These coincidences or synchronicities are going to happen a lot more frequently when we are in complete balance. We can tap into higher dimensional information when we are silent, when we are just purely existing. Synchronicities happen more naturally or when we're not trying. You can see here what brain waves look like, what our heart rate looks like when we are incoherent, when we are in these kind of emotions versus when we are in these emotions. A lot more balanced, a lot more fluid, a lot more stable and even. Incoherent, a lot of people's minds are just like this, just a cesspool of random shit. So that's why they say the greatest enemy is yourself, because that's you fighting yourself right there. All these different ways, all these different thoughts, emotions. How are you ever going to go any direction if you're fighting yourself like that? And this is where we get to the actual power. This is tapping into the power. So it's not just surrendering, being in pure presence, pure consciousness, but it's that plus aligning in a specific direction. So that's where you have your, set your intention, but then let go of the outcome at the same time. You got to have a direction, but you got to let go of it and let it just work itself out. Synergy in the direction that we want to go. The combined power of a group of things when they are working together, which is greater than the total power achieved by each working separately. So if you are coherent, you can see this in physics. It's called amplification. You have two waves, the red wave and the green wave are aligned. They are coherent. The result is an increase in energy without those two waves even doing anything extra. It's just the alignment of those two creates something bigger. That's why when you're firing on all cylinders, when you're clicking, when you're synergizing, everything in your life is aligned in the direction you want to go. It compounds. It creates an exponential effect. And you get to where you're going with less effort needing to be expended. When you're incoherent, when you're fighting a war within yourself, you're constantly shifting between incompatible trajectories. You want to grow, but you're acting from fear, or you're letting fear hold you back. You plan all this stuff and you set all these goals, but you don't follow through. You visualize one future, but you're not actually living it, right? Or maybe you're a victim to certain impulses or addictions that hold you back. You're constantly just fighting yourself and you're fighting reality. A lot of resistance, a lot of energy that's expended there. That's going to create slow progress or no progress and just a lot of randomness, a lot of random shit when we're coherent or when we're in harmony. And also, we're not forcing shit. So our internal timing matches external timing. Nothing is forced or delayed. Reality just flows. That's when you get it just happened at the right time or happened at the right moment. I met the right person, the right thing happened to me. When you truly have no friction between who you are inside and what's going on outside. Everything just becomes one. You're not acting too early because of fear or too late because of hesitation. You're really just authentically acting. That is coherence. And no extra energy is wasted because you take action when you should. You take action at the right time. That's where you can start to also create luck, right? Pure alignment. That's when you start to attract luck. You're not ahead of time or you're not behind it. You're at the right place at the right time, always. So, all right, this video is already way too long, but now we're finally at angel numbers. At the root of angel numbers is numerology, and this has been around super long. It's an ancient realm. And basically, you have to know that reality itself is mathematical. Math can be used to describe how reality organizes itself. That's why they say math was not created, it was discovered. It always existed. Because reality is not made of, matter, right? But it can be reduced to mathematical relationships. Everything can be explained with equations. And so you might be seeing these repeating numbers all the time. And what these numbers are telling you is a message from you to you, right? Different dimensions of you. It's giving you feedback as to what current path you're already on in life. And so the meanings to these numbers, they weren't invented randomly. They come from how numbers behave in nature, geometry, music, cycles, and systems. The same patterns repeat everywhere. It underlies everything. And so each number from 1 to 9 has distinct qualities. That is what numerology talks about. 1 is unity, it's the start. 2, then you separate, you got polarity, you got balance. 3 is where you get creativity, right? Creation, mother, daughter, son. There's a lot of threes that you can see throughout the universe. And so on and so forth until you get to 9, and that's the end of the cycle, right? Completion. But the main points I want to make here are 1, it's not going to be helpful to your growth if you keep seeking these angel numbers out or these signs from the universe for an ego reason. These are glimpses into the oneness of the universe. They're showing what trajectory are you on. And if anything, they are messages not from angels, but from you. They're a message from you to you. So take it, just know that it shows you're in some kind of alignment. That's good. And keep on moving. Keep it pushing. And so how can we align with this higher power that's found in synchronicities? How can we do that without spiritual bypassing? We don't want to just avoid our problems, not process our shit. And we don't want to not do the work just to be spiritual or whatever. But first, we have to realize, I already talked about the power of decision and intent. When we truly decide we are going to do something, not just like 1 foot in, 1 foot out, just dipping our toe in the water. No, we go fully into it. We decide, I am going to do this. Or not even that, I have this already. Like, it's no question I'm going to accomplish this. We create ripples in time and space. Our intention is so powerful. And again, we control our intention with what we place our focus or our attention on. And the next thing we have to do, we're going to have a lot more synchronous events when we loosen up our identity, holding on to a rigid identity or an idea of who we think we are. When we realize that that is false, it's just built up of shit from the past, shit we took on from other people, shit that our family or society told us to do, shit that we learned in school, shit that we heard online. All this stuff is not us. The real us is pure awareness. The real us is the witness, the observer of our mind, and not what our mind is telling us. We have a rigid identity, life becomes very predictable, right? Closed loops, predictable cycles. Letting go increases the chances for us to go on unexpected paths. It allows our goals or the intentions that we set to be fulfilled in the most natural way possible because we are not clinging to how we think life should turn out. So our goals could be fulfilled in the most unexpected way. That's what happens when we start tapping into what Deepak calls the infinite organizing power of the universe. And we stop forcing our life to match a certain story, or we realize that the stories that we've been telling ourselves are limiting us, and we can just choose to tell ourselves different stories about who we are, what we're capable of. And so we got to peel back all the layers of who we are not, right? The false self, and then our survival mode layer, the layer of protection. getting into vulnerability, and then we finally reach our true self. Identity cannot be found or fabricated, but emerges from within when one has the courage to let it all go. And I don't know why I threw this one here, but it relates to the whole entire presentation. There's no second or higher self to search for. You are the highest self. Only give up the false ideas you have about yourself. Your higher self is you, minus all of the distortion, minus all of the fear, the conditioning, the survival wiring, and some other things, regulating our nervous system, right? We're trying to create coherence between our body, our mind, emotions, our actions, and then reality as a whole. And I would also add in there our intentions. So, regulating our nervous system basically entails controlling our emotions, recognizing when we are in a fearful or a stressful state, and practicing just becoming fully present. Practicing controlling our breathing, relaxing our body, making a habit of entering a state of neutrality, which is basically just surrendering it all. Being open to all things and not judging everything. Staying open and not rigid, we already talked about that. Sitting with discomfort, not avoiding discomfort, seeing where we can thrive in discomfort. Can we stay calm or peaceful when we are faced with stress, when we are in stressful, chaotic situations? Can we grow and evolve despite being challenged? And a good non ego way to track our progress is tracking how coherent we are. Just focus on that. Don't chase signs or any results. How well do you follow through? How quickly do you recover from setbacks? How consistent is your energy? How quiet is your mind? And finally, just feeling throughout the day. Do you feel expansive or are you restricted? What kind of blockages do you have? Struggles only mean that there are blockages. Annoyances, stresses, it's a blockage. So that presentation was much longer than I wanted it to be, but I think everything that I said needed to be said. So let me know what you think. Am I just rambling on about a bunch of shit, or do you think there's something there? All right. See ya.